So the first thing to mention is the transcoding instance. We talked a little bit about this in earlier presentations. So what does it do? How can you scale your transcoding if you want to? So this is essentially deploying more bits of hardware around your central medial system to just do transcoding. That's all this thing's going to do. It's highly scalable. I mean, you could add 1, 100, 1,000,000 transcoders, whatever you want to do. So you're really just looking at deploying additional hardware. It works really nicely within something like, VMware or whatever, where you can deploy these extra bits of hardware very easily, or dare I say it, something like the cloud where you can deploy stuff easily in that way as well. What I've said to people here today is that, if this is something you're interested in, let us know your requirement. We're going to be flexible in terms of the cost that we can give it to you. The more of them you want, the lower the cost is going to be. We're interested in people having systems that work nicely and can scale. So don't necessarily see price as a barrier to entry. We can be flexible on that. The way it works in terms of licensing is we effectively give you a license key that dictates the amount of transcoders that you can use. So currently most people's license keys will just say that you'll get 1, which is the one in the middle. As you buy more and you license more, you will get a license key that would dictate that you can run more of them. And then the transcoders run, and provided the license key says they can run and they can get involved in the transcoding queue, then they'll run and you will get more content being transcoded. What it looks like, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but just to illustrate it, you've just got more things concurrently transcoding in the queue all the time. So the more transcoders you add, the more things are being done. I had a lot of conversations with people around prioritizing transcoding as well today and at various other times. So, this is something that we're looking into at the moment in terms of moving, potentially moving things around in this list here, or having particular categories that have priority over other categories, or even transcoding something in the cloud and transcoding something locally. So it's on our roadmap, but this at the moment is the way of doing it. You're deploying additional hardware to get rid of this queue or this bottleneck. This is particularly applicable to this application that we're talking about assignments and all that sort of stuff, where you might get a lot of stuff submitted at once and you want to have more processing power hitting it. With the new transcoder, you'll find that it'll do it quicker anyway, but just keep an eye on it is what I'd say. A lot of our larger customers have been coming back to us this year and upgrading their setups and going, with 2, 3, 5. I think the biggest one we've got, I think it's got 4, something like that, isn't it? One of the unis out in the States has got 4 that they're running, because they came to us when we took them over as a customer from Real Networks, and they said, look, we've constantly got a queue of 30 videos. What do we do about it? And we're like, well, get these transcoders, and they didn't even know about it. So we hooked them up with that. What does it look like in terms of a network diagram? I apologize, it's probably not that clear here, but you can see you've got your medial in the middle. Generally, what most people have is it hooked up to a MS SQL cluster. That's the sort of the databasey thing at the top. That'll be hooked into Moodle, the thing to the right of the database, an AD, and the content would be on a SAN. And then the thing to the left here, you're just adding these extra transcoding instances to your setups. This is just extra bits of hardware that are doing the job of transcoding. They've got to be on the same network. They've got to be able to see this server in terms of permissions and file paths and shares and all that sort of stuff. But they will just hit the transcoding queue. And it's a very, very simple install. You'd run this, it'll output just really one directory. It's just a very lightweight install. It's just got the encoder, a license key, and the service that's running. That's it. And you just run the transcoder instance installation. The only thing that I know from Dave that you've got to be a bit careful of here is the path that you install it to has got to be exactly the same path as your current medial system. So you don't want to install this to C media library if your current installation is C Helix media library, let's say, because then it won't work. So it's got to be exactly the same install path. And I think we're prompting for that in the installer now, aren't we?
We're going to make a change.
Yeah. So we've had a few people that have said it didn't work because of that. As I said before, with the scalable transcoding, you'll notice here, these profile files, some of them say .profile, some of them say _TI profile. So what it means is you can have different settings for the transcoding instance as for the one in the middle. So if you want the transcoding instances to encode the files slightly differently, or in a way that's a bit faster, or in a way that's a bit more intensive because you don't mind that it's going to take a bit longer, then you can customize both the way a transcoding instance encodes or transcodes and the medial system in the middle of all the transcoders, the way that transcodes the files as well. So you've got kind of ultimate customization power. Load balancing. This is probably the most popular setup that we've got in terms of scaling the solution. So people will just say, look, I've hooked this into my Moodle, I've hooked this into my Blackboard now. This mustn't go down. This has to be highly available. I must have this up all the time the same way that I've got my Moodle or my Blackboard. So we just deploy another medial system as a load balance pair. It's, from our point of view, it's relatively simple to do this. It's another medial. It sort of depends on the load balancing technology that you're using. We haven't found one that we can't work with so far. I would say if you're looking to do this, just let us know, and it's something that we can try out. But the theory of it is it's just a load balancer that's redirecting traffic requests from one to the other, dependent on whatever rule you define. Load balancers work in a variety of different ways. And obviously you need another medial license to do it. Other types of high availability, you're talking about, you could have this is the kind of the ultimate setup where you've got load balancing going on as well as the transcoders around it. It's highly resilient, highly available. It'll be there all the time, unless both of these servers go down and all kinds of fun and games happen. This is pretty much the top end of it. And again, we're flexible on licensing costs. If you want to go ahead with something like this, let's talk about it and let's see what we can do for you. And because we want to have these cool setups out there, we want to have this stuff out there that is working really nicely and is doing the job very, very well. And then what that looks like this, it's the same sort of setup that we had before, but we've just got the load balance pair in the middle with all the transcoding instances. And you can see here, there's the load balancer directing the traffic as it comes through the firewall. So all of this, for us now, is a pretty well-worn path. When I was talking about this stuff last year, it was sort of stuff that we'd done, maybe for one or two customers, and we hadn't really done that much of it. Now, since talking about this with customers, lots of people are doing this now, and it's very mature in IT 1 year, but we've done it in a lot of different setups, and it works really nicely. Content caching as well. We introduced a feature when we started using Wowzer. We introduced a feature that would enable you to set up a caching infrastructure as well if you wanted to. So the way this works, I think I've got a slide that I haven't got a slide that illustrates it better. The way this works is you have your one medial server in the middle that's running a Wowzer streaming engine, and then at each site that you want to connect to your media library in the middle, you also run a Wowzer media server. You don't run a medial system, just the Wowzer media server. Then any requests that go to the Wowzer to the one in the middle, the content will be served from the one at that client site. So it's a caching thing. The first time somebody views content, it will come from the one in the middle. The next time anyone on that network site, this one here, let's call it site A, views that clip of a cat falling off of a fridge or whatever, then it comes from this Wowzer media server. So it saves on bandwidth. This is not as relevant to people that are on Janet and that sort of stuff. It's just available. We mainly did this for applications in countries where they don't have bandwidth realistically. I mean, there's clients in the Middle East and clients in Latin America that find this very useful. I've not really come across anyone in the UK that would want to use this, but it's there. If you've got particularly low bandwidth sites, you can do that. The cost of doing something like this is effectively coming to us and saying, I want to do it in this many sites. We would give you the Wowzer streaming engine for each site, and then we would probably charge you a little bit of time just to set it up realistically, just to help you with it, because it's not really that tricky. What you're talking about here is you're changing a URL in the settings of your media library to hit a kind of caching URL rather than your regular URL. So it's not a huge amount of difference to the setup, but there's a little bit of setup with the DNS and everything at each site. Don't know how relevant it is, but I thought I'd show it anyway because it's work that we've done. That's it. That's the scaling. Click stop. Cool.